So this week we're going to be working with values. Values are the lightness or darkness of a color. When we talk about tints, those are the lighter values of the color. And when we talk about shades, those are darker values of a color. The main thing I want us to focus on is drawing with light pressure. You guys are probably tired of me saying draw lighter, draw lighter, draw lighter. The reason I want us to do this makes it easy to correct mistakes. If you draw really dark lines in, it's hard to erase them and have those lines disappear. So let's just focus on drawing light. Also, when we're building value slowly, as you're drawing light and you go on top of light, layer, light layer, light layer, it's easier to add more value than it is to erase it and build it back up. So focus on drawing light through this process. So here is the subject we're going to be drawing this week in our value lesson. It is a transparent light bulb. So what we're going to do first is we're going to break this down into shapes to make it a little bit easier to draw. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with a center line that we can define through this, and that's going to help us build our shapes, our circles, our rectangles, our trapezoids. So once we get that center line down the middle, we're going to sketch out a circle, and I'm going to show you how to do this entire process. Then we're just going to slowly break it down, trapezoid, rectangle, trapezoid again, until we can build the basic shape that we can draw this from. So I'm going to start with my center line down the middle of the light bulb. Just get it roughly the same angle as your reference image that you can download off of Blackbaud. Now, I'm using a ruler to get this straight line. You can always just use a spare piece of sketchbook paper and draw that line. The front and back of your sketchbook itself has a hard enough surface if you want to just open that up and lay that down, and you can put your straight line down with that. So I'm going to start, now that I have my center line, with the circle. If you want to freehand this, remember you're drawing your circle with your shoulder. I'm making several passes lightly to kind of define that circle shape before I go in and start adding a darker line. Now you're going to erase some of this when you go in and do the bottom shape of the light bulbs, add it in. So I'm just lightly putting in that circle so I can give myself kind of a rough guide when I go in and later add the details around. Now, I'm not there to make sure you don't do it, but if you want to use a dish or a cup or something and just trace the outline of it to create your circle, that's fine with me in this case. I'm focused more on the value of this light bulb we're getting. So if you want to go ahead and use something that's going to give you that round shape, go ahead. I just ask that it's big enough to fill enough of the page. So now I'm just going to go in and I'm just going to create that first trapezoid that's going to create the base of the glass part of the light bulb. And I'm just lightly roughing it in. I'm trying to make sure the lines are equal distance from that center line on top and the bottom of it. I'm drawing a little darker than I usually do, just so it shows up on camera a little bit better. But make sure you're drawing these light, because you're going to see me do a lot of erasing, because none of these lines are perfect. They're not supposed to be. They're just a rough outline of the shape I'm looking for. So the next thing I'm doing, I'm just drawing that rectangle. I'm just trying to get it equal parts above and below that center line again. So the top and the bottom of these lines should be parallel to that middle line. And then I'm going in doing the last trapezoid that will be the base of the light bulb. I'm using a number 2 pencil here, so if you don't have access to one and you are drawing with a mechanical pencil, just keep in mind you're just going to have to draw a little bit lighter than you normally do. So one thing that I'm going to start to do, as you can see, as I'm brushing kind of the eraser marks off. I have this brush that I use to clean it off. Obviously, you guys probably don't have this, so just keep in mind when you're erasing, just be careful as you're brushing it off. Also, when I'm drawing, I'll usually have a piece of paper towel or a piece of sketchbook paper under my hand, so when I'm drawing, I'm not dragging my hand through the image. So now I'm going to focus on getting the curves right underneath these straight lines. So it's just a bit of an S curve. So it goes in and out of that straight line, and that's just, you know, it doesn't have to be exact. You're just adding that base shape around. So that trapezoid I drew, I'm now going to go in and I'm going to erase those lines and leaving the S curve that's the base of that light bulb. You can go in and erase the rest of our circle that's inside the light bulb. We don't need that anymore. Still leave that center line that goes through. We'll need that for the filament in the inside of the light bulb. So now I'm just going to go in. I'm kind of reshape this. I'm going to shorten it up. I think that's a little too long. So since I've gone in and drawn light, I can go in and I can change these lines up a little bit. Just move things around, and I'm able to go in and erase these and not leave any dark lines since I've drawn with very little pressure. So now I'm going to go in and start to define a little bit of the detail that's in the base of the light bulb. There's a rim in there that has a bit of a reflection, so I'm going to go in and I'm just going to define that line clearly. So for this, I want a little more detail, so I'm going to go ahead and use my mechanical pencil. If the lead will come out. Maybe. No? Alright, so I'm going to go in and I'm just going to use the mechanical pencil just for a little more detailed line. And here my hand is in the way way too much. I'm going to do better at getting my hand out of the way to the best of my ability. When you're drawing with mechanical pencil, I'm working straight down, so it's hard to get that view through. So when I go back to the pencil, you'll have a little better look. So now I'm going to go in, I'm going to start defining shadows. I'm starting with lighter values, and just slowly we're going to build them up. So I'm just lightly putting in where the darkest part of the base of the light bulb is going to be. Then I can go in and just add a lighter value as well to the other side, knowing I'm going to build that top side up darker, putting light value on top of light value. It's hard to see, but I'm just going in so light you can barely see a difference. If you rewind a minute or two, you can see how it's slowly building up. So now we're going to move up from the black base onto the metal part of the light bulb. So I need to define my corners and where the threads are going to go. So the first thing I do is need to see there's 3 points that of the threads that go through in the middle of the top thread and the bottom thread. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out how wide the top is, and then I have the point of my base, and I'm going to go ahead and make 3 points in between the top and the bottom, and that's going to tell me where those grooves need to be. I'm going to define the middle first, and after the middle point, I have to find the middle point between the top and the middle and the bottom and the middle. And once I have those 3 points, I can go in and add the curves of where those threads are going to be. And again, for detail, I can go in with my mechanical pencil and just define the outline of those ridges a little more clearly. And then you can go in and just use your eraser and clean up those lines. You can get rid of those dots. You can get rid of the line that was our rectangle previously. And now you're going to do the same thing on the bottom. You're going to find the 3 points in between the top and the bottom. So there's the middle, and then the points between those. And those points are the top of our ridges. And now we can go through and we can erase the center line down the middle of the metal part of the light bulb. So when we're drawing the threads, let's make sure we focus on leaving the white of the page for both the highlights and the reflective highlights. And then we're going to slowly build the value of the dark parts of the threads. So I'm just going to go through and I'm going to lightly define the lines that go all the way through the threads on the photo. Note where the lines connect on the top of the ridge to the other side of the light bulb. Now I can go in and start to build up value in the dark parts and defining those lines of the shadows that are cast in the middle of the metallic part. In the photo reference, these shadows are almost black, but I am just building up the value lightly. So if I do make a mistake, if I don't like the angle, if I don't like where it's at, I can go in and erase it easily. So just start with these light triangles, and then you can start to build the value as they start to line up where you want them. So I'm just going from our photo reference here. The lines aren't exactly where they're at in the photo reference. I'm just getting them as close as I can. If you remember, from early in the year, if you were in art first semester, we talked about looking at your photo reference 50% of the time and drawing 50% of the time. So I'm just kind of looking up, seeing where I'm at, seeing if I need to add lines, where they need to go, and all I'm doing is looking up at my photo reference when I'm ready to move on to the next part. Now that these shadows in the metal are lined up where I want them to, now I'm going over and I'm just adding more value to them and darkening them up so they're getting to that point in our photo reference where they're almost black. So as I'm adding value here, I'm kind of taking note of how dark the black area is at the base of the light bulb. I don't want this metallic area to be as dark, so I'm kind of gauging off of that value right next to me on the left in the black of how dark things should be on the metallic part. The main thing I'm looking at in my photo reference here is I'm trying to see where the highlights and the reflective highlights are, and I'm trying to avoid those areas to the best of my ability so I don't have to go in and use my eraser a bunch to get the white of the page to show back up. So as you've seen so far in this work, I haven't done any blending. If you do want to blend this, don't use your finger. The oil in your skin when it mixes with graphite makes the graphite almost impossible to erase smoothly. If you do want to blend it, first of all, don't do it at this stage. Blending will be done at the end of the drawing, and we'll talk about some different ways to do that. So if you're gonna blend it, please hold off till the very end of the drawing, and we'll talk about the easiest and best ways to do that. Just continue to go through looking for the areas that have darker values and just lightly add that value in, and remember to always leave the white of the page, especially for that highlight across the top. We want that to be the absolute white of the page with no pencil value added whatsoever. You guys can see the how short the pencil strokes are when I shade. Here I'm doing longer ones, but when I get into tighter areas, I do tiny little concentric circles, and that is just filling in space a little more randomly so you don't get those lines that just go back and forth in one direction. This kind of fills more of the sketchbook paper in when I want to build value up. And now I'm just going back over, looking at my photo reference, and I'm just darkening things up that need to be a little bit darker, and that adds a lot of contrast to the white of the page and those really dark shades I've built up. So this will be the end of the first video that we work on this week. I would like you to take a photo of this first portion we have done, and I want you to upload that to Blackbaud so I can see your progress. And again, if you have any questions, you can email me, Justin Tigner at kwcs.org, and I will try to get back to you as soon as I can with any issues you might be having with this first portion of what we're drawing.